This is hour number 3 of The Bill Kelly Show on 980 CFPL London and 900 CHML Hamilton. My name's Rick Zamprin, in for Bill today and tomorrow and the next day and the next day after that. Next 2 weeks, in fact. And, we're going to talk about a lot of different things on the show as we have today. So if you're intrigued about a cornucopia of news and sports and entertainment stuff, this is the place to be. And if you missed any of the previous 2 hours of the show, you can download the Bill Kelly Show podcast wherever you get your favorite podcast. Coming up after 11:30, we're going to expand our sports scope to talk about the NHL expansion draft, the Open Championship over the weekend, in which a couple of Canadians were absolutely dynamite, the Blue Jays kicking off the unofficial second half to the Major League Baseball season. They're soon going to be flying north, and gladly back at Rogers Centre. I'm sure they are extremely happy about that. This is the start of week 2 of Tiger Cats training camp at Tim Hortons Field. And as we know, because of COVID-19 protocol, there are no fans allowed into Tim Hortons Field. But we have heard from a number of different players, and head coach Orlando Steinauer over the weekend got to chat with Tommy Condell, the offensive coordinator, as well, about how the team is looking this season. And Coach Steinauer is saying that this week number 2, is a big week for everyone as they continue to get ready for the start of the season.
Hopefully some of the soreness starts to subside a little bit, and it rears its head every now and again. But you hope that they're kind of playing their way in some sort of football shape, not conditioning shape. And so I'm looking forward to a big week for everybody, to be honest with you.
Hamilton season opener set for August 5th in Winnipeg. I'm not sure if he's still sore from his playing days. He might be. Paul Osbaldiston, better known as Ozzy, joins us now on the Bill Kelly Show on 980 CFPL and 900 CHML. Ozzy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? And it actually hurts more now than it did when I played. Aging is not fun.
Do you get up in the morning thinking, what have I done?
Some days, yeah. You just have to kind of go real slow up and down the stairs one at a time. And, I never really even, physically, got involved like the other guys do. So I sure feel for all my teammates that are my age now.
You participated in a number of training camps, most of them with the Tiger Cats, obviously, in your legendary career here in Steeltown. Number one, do you miss any of that?
Oh, training camp was like Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. You're showing up there and you're seeing all your friends that you haven't seen for, in months, the excitement of the season starting again, the possibilities of what you could do, and you always felt the best physically the day before you started training camp. And then from there, it was all downhill. Back in the days when I played, it was always 2-a-days. The guys were doing full contact. We kicked and punted 4 times a day. So after 3 or 4 days, your leg felt like it was going to fall off. Everybody was starting to limp around the university. And, I think we've made great strides in, the knowledge of what the human body can do and what's best for it. And when you see the camps that the players go through now, they still go through an awful lot, but it's not like when I started as a rookie. We're so much smarter with what we do physically, conditioning-wise, protective gear, nutrition. All those things have evolved so much that the players are in such a better spot now.
So if any of today's players, whether it's in Hamilton or anywhere else in the CFL or NFL for that matter, because they have very similar rules, they shouldn't be complaining about the rigors of camp because it's not quite the same as what it used to be.
Well, no, it's not. But, they're all warriors, and they would have done the same thing, we all did. And that's, buck up and get to it and get through it, so you could play the game that you love.
So you mentioned the best of times, the worst of times. There's certainly ups and downs during training camp because you might have a great practice and then the next day you might not have a great practice, and you know that all eyes are on you, especially nowadays with the enhancements of video and data and analytics and algorithms. There's a lot of pressure that goes on during a camp, isn't there?
Well, there always is with any level of sports, whether you're playing high school football or volleyball or, into the pro level, right? Every day you're trying to be the best that you can be and keep growing that through the season. And one of the great things I learned after I retired and I had the pleasure of coaching for 3 years was to see the mentality of the coaches and why they push you and how they push you and to understand that that's really for your benefit. When you were playing, sometimes it felt like you were, being criticized or being, harshly treated. But then you realize after that, the men that coach you just want you to, obtain your potential and be the best football player and the best man that you can.
Particularly as a kicker, and we're in discussion with legendary Tiger Cats kicker Paul Baldiston here on The Bill Kelly Show on 980 CFPL London, 900 CHML Hamilton. Rick in for Bill this week. As a kicker, it's a lonely existence at times, especially at training camp, because, they're going through their drills and you're doing the same thing, but there's not a lot of focus on you until, it's time for special teams.
Yeah, that's true. It's a little bit better now because of the increase in the amount of players that are available. When I coached my last year, I could take the kickers over and we had a long snapper, we had a holder. We could accomplish so much more during the day than when I used to play, where I had to wait till after practice because we only had a 37-man roster, and your long snapper was a lineman who's just gone through his second day of, or second practice of the day and is exhausted and it's hot. And so I think the skill of kicking and snapping and the importance of special teams has just gone 1,000 times better than where it was in the 70s and 80s and even the early 90s. So it's become so important and dedicated that you'll see such an increase in the percentages of field goals. When I first started in the league, guys were making 62 to 68% of your field goals. Now they're making, near 90%. To be an all-star, you've got to hit 92% of your field goals. And I just think it's because of the knowledge passed down by, ex-kickers or punters that have been willing to teach the younger guys, and the fact that a lot of the coaches now understand the importance of special teams in the game.
Your first training camp was way back in 1986, which I'd imagine feels like a lifetime ago, knowing all that you've achieved during your career. What was your mentality in your first few training camps as opposed to training camp 14, 15, 16, 17, and on?
Yeah, great question, and night and day. My rookie training camp was with the BC Lions. Lou Pasaglia was 10 years into his career. He just averaged 50 yards a punt, the highest in CFL history. He was the MVP in the Grey Cup, and I still had a year of junior football left. So my goal was to go up, learn as much as I could from Lou, gain the experience, and then go back and try and, have an even better year as my last junior football season. And Lou got hurt in the first exhibition game, so I got to play in the second, and then 3 regular season games, and it just kind of took off from there. When the Lions released me, Trevor Kenner got hurt. When Winnipeg released me, Bernie Ruoff got hurt, and I ended up playing in the Grey Cup in '86 and, doing very well that game. And, I was just happy to be there. I was just trying to learn as much as I could, soak it all in, try and become a better football player. Year 13, 14, 15, it was a formality. For me in 1999 and a lot of the players, we showed up with, an attitude of, okay, well, let's get these 2 weeks over with because we're going to win the Grey Cup. So to us, it was just a formality. Let's tighten things up. Let's become as best as we can before the season starts. But really, we're here just to get ready to win the Grey Cup. And as a kicker, later in those years, you learn to, you learn your body better. When you're 22 years old, you're kicking 150 balls, 200 balls a day. When you're, 32 years old or 38 years old, you're kicking 50 balls a day because you know what you have to do to become the best that you can for the week following.
In your training camps in 01, 02, 03, is it more a sense of, hey, I got to prove that I can still do it?
Always. You had to do that every year. You know, I had some great guys come and challenge me. You know, Paul McCallum came into camp. Mike Vanderjack came into camp. You know, and I was lucky enough to keep my job with those two guys. So that was every year. You know, there were some years when, you know, certain coaches would come to me and actually say, you know, do we sign another guy? Do you want anybody in, or can you handle it? You know, and as I got later in my career, it was a blessing to have someone come in, because if I had to do kickoffs one day and my leg was hurting, well, we'll let the young guy do it, right? There wasn't a threat to my job. But when you're younger, you know, no, you know, I'll do everything just to be able to have no competition. So that changed as well as time went on. And again, you know, I think coaches are so much smarter now that they realize that kicking 300 balls a day is detrimental. It's not a good thing. You know, you need quality over quantity. It has to be monitored and contained, and with the, you know, the people that you need that will help you do your job the best that you can when it comes game time. So again, just the whole, you know, process or thought in football about special teams and kicking is night and day from when I started to where it is now.
We're chatting with three-time CFL All-Star, six-time East All-Star, kicker and punter Paulus Baldiston here on The Bill Kelly Show on 980 CFPL London, 900 CHML Hamilton. Rick in for Bill today. Do you have, and you probably have a million of them, but do you have a best training camp story?
Oh, geez, one I can tell on the radio? No, Rick. That was part of the, you know, the best thing to me about playing football. You know, there was a lot of things, but the friendships that you build, the camaraderie that you build, the practical jokes, it was as much, you know, as what happened off the field as on the field. And to me, that's something that you'll never replace, that locker room friendship and mentality and brotherhood. It can't be replaced anywhere else in the world. And those were the things that you tended to remember the most. Not the games, the championships, yes, absolutely. You remember those above everything, because that's why you play the game. But just the camaraderie and the road trips and the good times, the practical jokes, you know, there wasn't a day that you wouldn't go into that Tiger Cat locker room and laugh as hard as you possibly could 2 or 3 times a day. It was absolutely the best thing about the game.
Your career stat line, I was refreshing myself on some of the extraordinary, mind-boggling numbers, but a couple of them stood out to me. And number one was you went 2 for 5 passing the football for 7 yards. I don't know if they were fake punts or throws out of necessity. And the other one was, I think it was 1990, they had 1 rush for 30 yards. Do you remember that play at all?
I remember all 5 passes and the rush, and you're crushing me right now, Rick. The 2 passes, actually one was designed, and it was under Ron Lancaster, and I actually threw an okay ball, although I was scared to death because I didn't want to try and throw it too hard or too soft. And the other one was actually an underhanded toss to Rocky DiPietro because I fumbled the snap on a punt, and he was playing the up back. The 30-yard run was, that was in Toronto, and basically caught the ball, looked up, there was no one around, and took off down the sidelines. It was one of my better non-kicking moments, or probably the only non-kicking moment that I ever had. So, yeah, you remember funny things like that. And, you know, I was always one that you know, when I was younger, all kickers do the same thing. You think you can play the game, you go and make tackles, and then after a while, you'll make a couple of tackles, and the next day, you know, you can't kick because you're barely walking or your shoulder's hanging on a thread, and you learn that, okay, you know, my job is to turn the guy to the sideline, or you get even smarter and look for where your guys are behind them and cut them off and turn them back so the guys that know what they're doing can make the tackle.
Last question for you, and it's regarding Mike Filer, who announced his retirement today. I know you were on the coaching staff, and Mike was still on the team at that point. How difficult is it a decision to finally hang it up?
It's crushing. You know, some you know, all players make it for different reasons. You know, it is never a good thing to leave the game because it goes by so fast. And there isn't a day that I think that I would trade anything I have to be a Tiger Cat again for just one day. You know, just to feel the camaraderie or to play a game, you know, just one day of being a football player again, because you miss it so much, you love it so much, and there's nothing out there that replaces the feeling of being a Tiger Cat or a football player. So everybody retires for different reasons. You know, a lot of them are very similar. Some aren't. Some guys get better opportunities at a younger age. Most guys just decide physically that they can't do it anymore, which was my case. You know, I was kicking the ball not to hurt myself rather than to be successful. And at that point I said, okay, I'm going to let my team down, and I'm not going to have a good year, and I'm not going to do that to the organization. Everybody else has different reasons. Some guys get told and they're not ready to leave the game. And that's probably the hardest one to accept. When a coach comes to you and says, okay, you know, we're going to let you go, and you still feel like you can play the game physically and mentally and you have more in you, that's tough. And same thing with injuries. You know, you've seen guys like Matt Dunnigan and Kyle Walters play with me, and you know, an injury ended their career when they both could have played considerably longer times, you know, and that's hard to see as well. And it didn't happen to me, so I can't tell you. It's probably, maybe that's even harder to accept.
Well said, and I know you're not on the coaching staff or kicking for the Ticats any longer, but you certainly are a Ticat for life. That's in the fans' minds and the organization's minds for sure. Ozzy, really appreciate the time, and enjoy the season when it kicks off on August the 5th.
Oh, thank you, Rick. I'm looking forward to it. I really hope this is our year.